I so love the ParTecK people and the culture and the community of what's going on, and that everyone's involved in these delicious things. But I think it can be often a challenge of like when you bring people together. Um, for some people, they don't know necessarily how they want to engage. For other people, they don't want to feel like they're taking up all the air with the thing that they're passionate about, which is lethal in terms of engagement, because you have all these people with amazing stuff that they're doing who are saying, I don't want to take up the air, when actually, if what they were doing was saying, here's the stuff that I'm involved with, and here's why it is so cool and why I'm involved with it, that's what gets other people involved. And that's what gets other people excited about it too. Um, yeah, so just looking at how we play with all those pieces. So I'll get this loaded up. So the presentation that I'll do, that I'll kind of spiel this part through, is based off of what we're doing here in Langley, but then afterwards we can talk about how does that shift when we're talking about something like an HDC or a ParTecK context, if that sounds good. So the basic idea, so this was, again, for Project Hyphae, for any of these projects, you come up with a mission, and it can be wildly general or specific. But the ways that unmanagement works best is if it is a somewhat clear mission in a complex domain where there's a bajillion different approaches you might take to playing in that space. The functional methodology is stone soup. Everybody brings their awesomeness and you work together to have something delicious and emergent come out of that without having any idea beforehand what it's going to be, and being okay with that, of just bringing the piece that you have and seeing what happens. More specifically, here's the stone that everybody brings. So we bring our own awareness of what the challenges are that we're trying to engage around, and what the needs are. We bring our passions, our skills, our idea, our community, our resources. Then at the bottom there, you'll see from the inner development goals, aspects of our being, our thinking, our relating, our collaborating, and our acting. And all of those are things that we're each trying to foster in different ways as well. So we bring all of that to the table. And then we try to get to know each other and learn what are our values, how do those translate like through our needs into our goals and the trajectory that we're on in life. And whether that's something that is, we have the blazing golden path out before us, or whether we are just in a bardo state or plummeting out into the wilderness and trying to figure out what's next. Any of those is great, but knowing that for each other. We then take that for all of us, the people who come in, and it's community through projects. So the way we engage and the way that we start usually is with take the tiniest thing. Take something that can be done in a weekend that you do together that is then done and that you can look at and say, we did that. And that you can then say, okay, well, what was the result of that and what do we want to do next? But so we build community through engagement and through projects. As we do that, we build in the organizational partners that are useful. As if it's something that needs to gain momentum or can gain momentum, then we bring in organizational partners. We bring on resources that are needed to make things move forward. And in a like deeply Project Hyphae or a Tommaso way of doing it, we then open source everything. So all the learnings, all the documentation, just like how did we decide what to do and what did we decide to do and how did that go and how would someone else do that? All of that then becomes a public resource that other people can take, modify, try out, repost, send back to us, bend, fold, spindle, mutilate, do whatever they want to with and make it their own, so that it becomes something that kind of keeps on sharing out. In terms of the project, going back to the group work stack as a way of looking at it, this is sort of the backbone of what it is. So come together over purpose, invite people in who are going to be people who can engage and who will probably be interested in that thing, share through story. So we're not getting intellectual about, the doctoral research that I've done indicates that there is a need for teens to engage more in personal dialogue. It's here's my experience of it. Here's my lived experience or what my life has taught me and that I'm reflecting in terms of that purpose that brings us together. So we make sure that we don't get overly cerebral, but are coming from whole self. From there, then a process of naming, of figuring out, well, what is the terrain we're talking about? What are the things? Yeah, all of the different pieces that are relevant there. Optionally, then there's a time shift component, and that's the visioning forward, practical utopias sort of side of thing, where we might say, look 5 years ahead or 10 years ahead and say, for this domain, if things were just magically thriving, what would that look like? What would that even be? And again, as you were talking about that imaginal piece, like to fully engage with that imaginal piece and play with possibility. From there to then dive back to priority focus to say, like, cool, so with that in mind, what's the first step on that road? What's something that's a high priority, that is low effort, high impact, that's a right size bite for this group in this moment, and then do the thing. And then within there, there's the reflection action cycle of you reflect, you create, you do it, and then you reflect on what you've done and do sort of an agile retrospective to say, how was that? What went well? What could go, even better another time? And how would we make that happen? There's harvesting all the results of those and then putting them online, putting them, sharing them however we do, and then iteration. Rinse and repeat. We're then back to the next project that the community is doing. And the nice thing is it's all opt-in and it's a protoplasm of individuals rather than a structured organization. So it's not saying the next project that ParTecK is undertaking is X. It's that the people come together and have ideas, and a few people might say, hey, this would be kind of a cool thing to do. And then they do that thing. And so it can, again, it kind of kaleidoscopes different projects based off of what it is people are keen on doing. Using agile methodology as an approach, riffing off of that, is a great way to go. Because again, rather than doing, it's all about how do you rapid prototype impact and experience. So what's the little thing we can do now that's going to do something good and that we can build off of, rather than building castles in the sky. It's not about saying, here's the master plan for how humanity can be thriving 10 years from now. That's the thing that's emergent and that comes from 100 little experiments rather than something that that is more fragile because it's more waterfall. Again, for us, for Tomaso, we tend to be using the Sustainable Development Goals as the outward mapping of a lot of the areas of need, but that's held lightly. It's not something where that is, this isn't the be all and end all. It's a really good map where if we as a species were thriving in all of these areas, it would be amazing. But we can use whatever map is the map that works well for an organization or a community around that. And then again, those interdevelopment goals, we really try to look at how do we weave those into our project and community process so that we're paying attention and intention to each of those sections, to being our inner compass, our integrity and authenticity, our self-awareness and presence and openness and learning this mindset. How do we design what we're doing in a way that fosters all of that? And the same for the others. I'll share the Miro board with you so we can dive through it. So I won't go through each of them, but each of them has a whole realm of different things that we can work on as people and foster for ourselves. And so that's the basic it for the sort of the presentation component of it. And then what it really is about is how to mix together the right set of times and events and platforms that allow for the combination of synchronous and asynchronous collaboration and play together. And we have a set of platforms that we're starting to use more. So, we have a Notion back end that we have bridged to Slack so that people can be in Slack and engage with parts of the database that are relevant to them. So you could jump into a given team channel and very quickly find out, so who's actually a part of this team as opposed to just happens to be in the channel, and what are the tasks that this team has outlined and what's the status of those, or any of those kinds of things that are more on the nitty-gritty project management sort of side of things. I'm using increasingly, like I said, ChatGPT and looking at different ways to use that to more rapidly prototype, to expand and ideate and develop content that is at the service of the people who are doing that actual churning and thinking and being. Ideally is against maximum transparency. So as much as possible, making recordings like this one and then saying we'll just make that a public thing. We'll make it so that any of those pieces are something that anyone can look at, both because that can be exciting and inspiring, but also because it's messy. And because one of the key things is breaking down that idea that the extraordinary things that happen in the world are because there are breathtakingly perfect geniuses who somehow execute marvelousness. And that instead what it is a whole bunch of people messing around and stumbling around and figuring cool stuff out. And with every aha, it gets better. And the more people are able to actually see and engage with that messy process, the more it feels like it's something that anyone can do. And that's critical, I think, right now as a species on the planet. That's something that we need to do. So that's the basic approach. And then a lot of it is about how do we make decisions together? How do we engage collectively around what it is that we want to do in a way that is open and inclusive and participatory without allowing that openness to turn into paralysis and calcification, so that there's a spirit of dive in and let's play and let's find out, while also being sensitive to making sure that anyone who's wanting to engage understands that they hold a perfect missing piece that will make things better if they engage.
This is wonderful. So I had a question about the engagement. So are
Yeah.
there kind of stages? So let's say there's the curious kind of, but not sure how much I'm able to commit, but wanting to be part of it. And then then how does that work?
Yeah, and the nice thing is, I think that again, all of that is an opt-in gradient. So it's easy to do a workshop and to simply say, like, we're going to do a World Cafe that's on an overall theme where everyone is welcome to jump in. We'll make small group sessions. We'll harvest back the stuff that comes from that. And that in itself is a thing. So, like, if you've done that, yeah, you've done that thing. For people who are wanting to, it's a lot. What it makes me think of in this moment is it's like online gamers in MMORPGs, where you have some people who are like, we are a guild, and every Friday we are spending 10 hours grinding on these various quests and doing something. And that's what those folks want to do. So they do that and they enjoy it. And that's what they get out of that. There's other people who jump in and are like, I'll try this out. I'll check it out. That was cool. I'm done. I feel complete with what that experience was. And that's also welcomed and great. And there might be other people who want to have the freedom to dive in, to not have commitments in terms of saying, here's the specific tasks that I've taken on, but who want to engage in the discussion and who want to be inserting their ideas and debating and discussing and refining and sharing resources, saying, here's someone who I know is super keen on this, maybe I'll bring them in. Or here's an organization or a book or a video that seems really relevant that I'll drop in here. And then it's about how do you collect all of that and turn it into a meaningful curation so that you have access to those different pieces. And do we have that all perfectly figured out? Absolutely not. That's part of the messy process, is we're still figuring out how do you do that effectively. But that's a kind of a part of the fun. But yeah, it's meant to be something where very much, and where it's often like not just, when I say gradient, that makes it sound like an escalator, and it isn't meant to be that. It's meant to be something where in each moment people choose, and that it's responsive to our lives. So you might say, great, it looks like April is going to be a time where I have loads of time, so I'd love to commit to doing X, Y, and Z. And then to be able to say, actually, my son is super sick right now, and so I need to offload these things from my plate because that can't be my priority right now. And for there to be the combination of grace, flexibility, transparency, and responsibility around all of that, with the understanding that that doesn't have to be perfect, that we each take away what we need to in terms of how do we engage with each other. And we'll find the people where it's like, oh yeah, this is the person I love engaging with, and this is working really well. And someone might feel like, oh, this Daniel guy has lots of ideas, but he keeps flaking out on different things, so maybe I don't want to jump into a giant project with him. So whatever it is, it's all pretty organic and self figuring out as far as that goes.
It's exciting. So what is the invitation to the ParTecK network?
So I think that the first invitation would be, in the same way that for Langley, it's thriving at Langley. It's identifying what is that mission. And so I think a piece of it would be, how do we bring people to the table, get a sense of what is it that they're passionate about, and what's their current trajectory? What is it that they're engaged in the world? How are they engaging in it? Where are the places where that is making abundant resources for others? And where are the places where they need support in that piece that they're doing? And from there, then it's the matter of discerning and saying, okay, well, where are the points of play? And part of that is looking at what's the availability, so that we know realistically, are we talking about doing something at this scale or this scale or this scale? And and then rolling things that are suitable together. So that if you have 4 people with widely varied areas of interest, but where it feels like there's potential to play and they have high availability, probably there's a project there. If you have a couple of people who have, again, sort of shared interests, but different disciplines they're coming from and have almost no time to work together, that might be a project there because they're going to be able to do that in a way that fits with their timeline. So really it would be a bit of that. And the first step would be making the space. So a combination of an onboarding document, a Notion database, a Slack channel, and an invitational event. So as in an event that people come to that functions as the invitation for deeper engagement in this. And the great thing is that from there on, it's emergent. So there's things that we throw together and there's ways that we try to move things forward. But really the shape of what comes next is entirely dependent on who jumps in and how they jump in and what it is that they're interested in.